Hello and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, Director of Advanced Media Production at Cal State Long Beach. Today we're going to talk about how colors affect our moods, our lifestyles, and our purchasing patterns. My guest today is Jacquelyn Morell. Ms. Morell is a lecturer in Family and Consumer Sciences in the areas of fashion design and consumer affairs. Welcome, Jacquelyn, and thank you for joining us on Talking Points.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here today to talk about color.
Well, let's start talking about color by talking about it in a cultural context.
Sure.
We know what colors do and how our moods are affected by colors here in the United States, but if we go around the world, do colors mean different things to different cultures? And the second part of that question is, are there certain consistencies among certain colors that we can find around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can find some consistencies anywhere that we go in the world. Red is usually going to signify life. You can even think of things like the Red Cross. And a lot of this has to do with, of course, the color of blood. And other colors like green, anywhere you go can signify things like nature, our planet, our Earth. But there are a ton of cultural components and societal components of color as well. So for example, here in the United States, you're going to be green with envy, but in the German language, you're actually yellow with envy. Or here in the United States, red a lot of times can signify things like danger or caution. However, this is the symbol color for Chinese New Year, meaning luck and prosperity. So we could take just about any color and find that there are differences depending on the culture, the language, and the location. However, most studies do show that if languages are similar, that there are usually then similar components of color throughout the language.
And I want to transition into talking about how colors are used to represent emotional states.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned in the open, we're talking about moods and how colors affect our moods, but we also use color to identify moods in people that we're familiar with or people that we see or even strangers that we might meet on the street. For example, we'll say, he seems to be in a red-hot rage, red indicating anger.
Yeah.
Or we might say, I'm feeling blue today. And so we're using blue to represent a melancholy state or feeling depressed. Or we might say, wow, she's white as a ghost. Or he's green with envy. So why do we use colors to identify emotions?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think a lot of it boils down to the fact that we're very visible. You know, we like seeing things. We can understand things better when we can visualize them. And emotions can be really hard for us to not only describe, but even for ourselves to understand. So this is really a way that we can clearly relate to one another and have kind of this visual cue that helps us represent how we're feeling. It also is a way that we don't have to describe or explain too much about what's going on in our lives, right? We just say, I'm feeling blue, and someone else can really understand and relate because they can visualize that color.
And so we have, through our culture, identified certain colors to mean certain ways of feeling or certain emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about now the colors green and red. You've already, and I've already mentioned, and you've talked about red already. Red represents stop, or it's a warning. It's a red flag warning. And green represents go. We're going to green light the project. That's the typical phrase that we use in the business world. So why, stop lights are an obvious example of this. Go with green, stop with red. But why did we pick those colors to represent either go or stop?
Yeah, so we actually transitioned from, we picked up our stoplights, our modern stoplights from the railroad. And these weren't always the colors actually. White used to be associated with go. You can see though that that would be a problem in the daylight. It can be very, very difficult to see a white light. So red and green were probably selected in why they've been continued to be used. One being they're complementary colors, so they're directly across from each other on the color wheel. And they contrast each other really nicely. So if we put a blue and a green and a purple next to each other, we might get confused from a distance as to what color is what. But with our green and our red, they contrast really nicely. We're not going to confuse the two. Also, interestingly enough, green is one of the easiest colors for us to see at a distance during the daylight. However, that transitions as it gets darker, as we get to dusk and to night. Red actually becomes one of the easiest colors, and red-orange. They become the easiest colors for us to see at a distance. Makes sense then to use these at stoplights. You can even go a bit further with this then and think about selecting an automobile, or if you're running or if you're cycling, what colors you could wear to protect yourself against oncoming traffic. What could be the easiest for people to view at certain times of the day.
Well, let's talk about the color spectrum and what those colors represent if we're decorating or designing our home or having it painted.
Yeah.
So what colors will be used to represent which types of moods?
Yeah, so yellow is a comfortable color. We think of happiness with yellow. A doctor's office is probably going to want to use some soft blues or soft greens because blue really represents calming. It's also considered a very loyal, trustworthy color. You can think maybe of like your favorite denim pair of blue jeans, right? Red is for kind of passion and love, so more of a fiery color. And black, an accent wall in black, can signify power and sophistication.
And so when we talk about decorating a home or an office, we want to establish a mood for people that come in to that office, or maybe for ourselves. We want to have a room that is calming.
Right.
Do those same rules apply in terms of those colors? Do they apply with fashion as well?
Now, I think obviously they can apply slightly to fashion, but of course when we talk about fashion, there's a lot of just personal preference that comes into play when we select our clothes, as well as kind of what makes our skin tone look better, you know, what we feel comfortable in. As children even, you know, our favorite color, so we might gravitate towards that. However, obviously, we have some societal components, some cultural components to this. So if I'm going to the bank, totally okay for me to be wearing a white t-shirt. However, if I'm going to my best friend's wedding, it's probably not appropriate for me to wear a white dress, right? So we do definitely have some cultural components and some societal components to the colors that we select for certain outings and events.
Well, let's talk about fashion and what are called seasons, because we have 4 seasons. That's hard to know that here in California.
Absolutely.
Because I've heard it said we only have 2 seasons. We have fall and summer.
Yeah.
But basically, so when you go around the country in the Midwest, the northern states, obviously there are very dramatic differences in seasons. And so you have the seasonal clothing line. And so is it hard to have seasonal clothing lines rolled out here in California for the reasons I've just said?
Surprisingly, no. I think a year-round wardrobe is incredibly boring. People are constantly looking for changes. They're looking for updates. So even if we may not be feeling fall, we get excited for those rust colors, those evergreens, you know, those really deep kind of colors that remind us of fall. And as much as the weather can impact, right, what we're going to be wearing, so does marketing. And a lot of this also has to deal with our holidays. When we think of certain holidays, we think of certain colors, and we want to then provide those colors in what we're wearing and get excited. We even have, you know, seasonal drinks, seasonal food, and this all kind of then falls in line with those seasonal colors, even if we don't really have a change of seasons here in California.
Well, if we talk about differences around the country, are there areas that emphasize brighter colors than other parts of the country?
Absolutely. So places like Florida, you know, Miami, are there going to be brighter colors? A lot of times we, of course, do see changes of colors based on the weather, and somewhere where it's going to be a really, you know, hot climate year-round, the colors are probably going to be more bright.
All right, and as far as winter, when people are in the northern climates or northern states with the colder climate, and they want to stay indoors more often. Does that have an impact on the clothing that we purchase and wear?
Yeah, it really does, because we do use clothes a lot to attract people, to show that we have things in common, bonds, and when we're staying at home a lot, we're not really needing clothes to serve that purpose. So we do tend to kind of select more muted clothes when we're just kind of sitting around the house, yeah.
And when we talk about the difference between women's fashion and men's fashion, traditionally, and I know things are probably changing, but traditionally women had a much larger range of colors that they could choose from when they went shopping for the latest fashion. But men, much more sort of constrained in terms of the colors they could use. Now, if you went to a golf course, you might see a guy in neon colored bright pants or plaids and things of that nature, but other than on the golf course, it was always pretty traditional for men in terms of colors. Is that changing? Are men's colors becoming brighter? And was it more fun in the past to work in women's fashion because of the range? And is that changing as well?
Yeah, so it's definitely changing. I've always worked in women's fashion, which is quite a fun area because you can play around with a lot of prints and patterns and styles. But men's fashion is currently changing, and there's a lot that's kind of influencing this. One, with the rise of social media, we now have influencers, bloggers, celebrities that are putting an emphasis on men's fashion and even men's beauty products, as well as we're really redefining what masculinity means, and men have much more ease now of shopping. They don't have to go to the store and pick out things. They can just shop online. If they don't like those bright colors, they can just go ahead and send them back with a lot of free shipping. So we're definitely seeing a lot more fun be involved in men's fashion. It's a really, really exciting time to be working in men's fashion, and hopefully we'll just continue to see this expand even more.
Now, if we apply colors to packaging, and that could be everything from the tags you see on the clothing in the store to other kinds of packaging where you buy something that's fully packaged. What are we doing with colors, and can you see where color is being used to sort of convince or persuade people in the purchasing process?
Yeah, of course. It's a little bit of a marketing trick, especially right now. One of the trendiest colors to use is green. As we become more aware of the impacts we're making to our planet and the environment, and looking for ways for companies and individuals to be more sustainable, for these businesses to be more ethical, green is being used a lot to kind of portray that on hang tags, on labeling, packages, boxes. Now, we have to be careful as consumers because sometimes this actually does mean that something is organic or that it's being made with recycled materials. However, a lot of businesses are catching on to this marketing ploy, and they are realizing that the consumer will think something is organic. They'll think it is made in an ethical way. They'll think that it's sustainable if we put a green hang tag on it. So we do have to be careful and do our research to know, is this a marketing ploy, or can we really trust here that this product is sustainable?
Well, we only have about 20 seconds before we go to the break, and I wanted to ask you about web sales and online marketing. What are the graphic artists doing these days with colors to enhance the marketing efforts online?
Yeah, so we have these prompts usually that we use on websites called the call to action prompts, and they are the things that, click on this to buy, right? Go to your shopping cart. We're going to see that normally being used in blue. Remember, I referenced before that blue is that trustworthy color, that loyal color. So people feel more confident and comfortable clicking on a button. They trust it if it's in blue.
On that note, we do have to go to the break. When we come back from the break, Jacquelyn has brought some swatches, so we'll be able to take a look at what seasons represent compared to skin tone, eye color, hair color, etc. Stay tuned.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly. My guest today is Jacquelyn Morell. Jacquelyn, when we went to the break, we were talking about colors and fashions and moods and what appropriate colors are for different kinds of fashion. So you've brought the swatches here today to help us along in that discussion. So if we're out shopping for clothing and accessories as well, I would assume,
Yes.
what do we look for in terms of color, and how do we know when we've hit the right combination?
Yeah, so we actually have our seasons for colors, and there's a quick little test that you can do in your own home to designate what season you are. You usually start with silver and gold. If you don't have fabric swatches, you can always use jewelry as well. And what you like to do is hold the silver and gold underneath your chin, and you're gonna look for clear signs. So when you hold the silver up, do your eyes pop? Do your cheeks look a bit rosier? Does your skin look healthier than normal? And same with the gold, you'll do the same thing. Usually you'll start to see if you aren't a silver or if you aren't a gold, when you hold that particular color up, you might start to see some little hairs and peach fuzz. Under your eyes may actually start having bags to them. And if this is a bit harder or you don't have these swatches, you know, kind of noticing what jewelry you gravitate towards. If you usually gravitate towards gold jewelry, odds are you're going to be a gold. If you gravitate towards silver, like I apparently do, odds are you're going to be a silver. Then what you can do from there, and it's usually quite helpful to pull up some YouTube videos because you're going to want to go through your closet and try and find the colors that represent each season. So our silver usually goes with our winter and summer. And then what you start doing is holding up those particular colors. So this is a blue for winter, and this is a strawberry for summer. You start kind of noticing again with those similar patterns that you did with the silver and gold, what really appeals to your skin tone, your hair, and your eye color. The silver is going to go with a summer and winter, and your gold is going to go with spring and autumn. There's tons of helpful YouTube videos and articles online, so anyone can do this at home. However, I do always like to tell people, just have fun with it. Color should be fun. If you've been wearing the wrong colors that don't necessarily make your skin look brighter or your hair look shinier, don't worry about it. But you may want to utilize this for things like interviews or a big presentation where you want to make sure that you're looking your best.
So do we tend to drift toward contrast or complementary in terms of color combinations?
It really just depends on what is trending in fashion. For example, right now we are, and we have been for a while, seeing trending in monochromatic colors. So what that basically means is it's the same color. So take red, for example, but you're maybe mixing things like a very bright red with a pastel red. And there are times, though, that this isn't necessarily trending. So it's really dependent on what we're seeing in fashion, what we're kind of seeing the high-end designers doing, and then it kind of filters down from there.
Okay, well, we've talked quite a bit about clothing. Let's talk now about brand identification for corporations who want to identify themselves with certain colors or color schemes. So we know that, for example, if you fly Southwest Airlines, you're going to see a lot of blue, red, and tan because that's the color of their aircraft. Obviously, if you're renting a car, the different rental car companies have different colors. Avis is famous for red. Enterprise Rent-A-Car has the green, the black with the white lettering, and then National Rent-A-Car has green with white lettering and so forth. So how do companies come about making the decisions for color schemes? Are these test marketed color schemes? Do they have consultants that tell them to utilize certain colors, or is it a bit of both?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of both. If you have large funding, a very large business or corporation is going to have more ability to hire somebody or get research. They might do focus groups, test marketing. Whereas smaller companies, this is going to be possibly trial and error. And to be honest, sometimes it may even be just picking your favorite color and going with it. However, a lot of times these colors can become a part of the brand's identity. So you can think of things like Barbie pink for Mattel, also the T-Mobile magenta, 3M in their purple. A really great example of this is Tiffany's and their Tiffany blue. It's even called Tiffany blue. They founded using this color because at the time period when Tiffany was starting, it was a very, very popular color because of the turquoise gemstone. It also was a favorite of Victorian brides. They would give gifts of brooches with turquoise in them at weddings, and it was supposed to signify not to forget about the couple getting married. Hence why it also has the nickname Forget-Me-Not Blue. So Tiffany used this color in their packaging, later in their advertising, and also in their bags. It became so much a part of the brand that they actually have exclusive rights to use it within their trade industry, meaning nobody that's going to be competing with Tiffany & Co. can use that color. So if I wanted to start a wedding cake business, totally okay for me to use the Tiffany blue. I want to paint my house Tiffany blue, absolutely fine. I want to start a competing jewelry line, odds are there's going to be some legal problems here with me wanting to utilize that color.
So that's an interesting point, that companies, if they're well enough established, they can actually file for patents or trademark.
Absolutely. And it doesn't always work. It really needs to identify the brand. For example, if anybody sees a little blue box somewhere, they don't have to see Tiffany written across it. They know usually that there's going to be an exquisite piece of jewelry in there. It has to be something that is so identifiable, like a slogan, like a logo, right? Same kind of rules used here, but obviously with color.
And we were talking earlier about how Nike has that trademark swoosh.
Yes.
Clearly that's patented.
Absolutely. Same as well with Adidas and their 3 stripes. Doesn't really matter what color those stripes are, but they have rights to those stripes.
Okay, well, let's transition now to talking about fast food, because color is being used to, I guess, manipulate consumers that are hungry.
Yeah.
So why do we see so much red and yellow in fast food advertisements, in neon signs, and so forth? So I can list a few: McDonald's, In-N-Out Burger, Burger King, The Habit Burger Grill, Del Taco. They all use red and yellow. And then we have Wendy's, Chick-fil-A, and what's the other one? There's another one that uses red. Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
That's the one. So why do they all use red, and why is red and yellow the combination that we see so much for fast food?
Yeah, so it's not coincidence, and it's not just trending colors. There is actual scientific reasoning for those to use those 2 colors. One, yellow is supposed to be a very comforting color. So you're supposed to feel very comfortable when you see this being used with their marketing, their signage. And on top of that, red is supposed to induce those impulses. So if we feel comfortable and we have these impulses at the same time and we're already hungry, combining those, it actually has a cute little term. It's called the ketchup and mustard effect. And a lot of establishments will then use this within their fast food chain. So there is a biological factor to this. Red actually speeds up your heart rate and your blood pressure. And the theory then is maybe you'll eat your food just a bit faster. Maybe then you'll order another burger before you know you're full. Or maybe you'll leave the restaurant more in a fast pace so they can get more customers in, the kind of turn of the customers at a faster rate.
That's interesting, because it is consistent when you look across the board. You'll see red for sure, and then often red and yellow put together. Let's talk about now, when we talk about color schemes and the development of certain color schemes, there's a company known as Pantone, which has more or less cornered the market on color schemes. And tell us who is, or what is, Pantone, and why is their particular color scheme or set of colors become an established authority on color?
Yeah, so Pantone is a company that does color forecasting. Basically what they are is a universal language to color. In better terms, they basically help to organize color and communicate color. And they have books upon books, just huge, of any color imaginable. Actually, here at Cal State Long Beach, even our school colors are linked to particular Pantone numbers. So what this does and helps out with, if our school wants to go ahead in the bookstore and stock certain products, they are able to look at those Pantone numbers and make sure then that they get products in those particular numbers, that then students will be happy that it's the perfect color to represent their school. So we see this with NFL teams, we see this across the board with colleges, and of course businesses use this when they're manufacturing to convey from designer to manufacturer what color is going to be used. Because if I just say I want green, there are so many different types of green. I could mean evergreen, I could mean apple green or grass green. But if I give a particular number of Pantone, at least I know I'm communicating. I'm going to have a product that's in the color that I requested. Pantone also does this really fun thing every year. They come out with a color of the year. So for 2022, their color of the year was Very Perry, and it's a very bright and vibrant purple. They also then talk about how they got inspired to portray this as the color of the year. So they said that during this time when we were at home, a lot of stay-at-home orders, and now we're entering back into public, they wanted a really fun, exciting color to get people excited to be back out into the world. And what normally then happens is we start seeing this color pop up everywhere. People even start dyeing their hair Very Perry. A lot of interior design, fashion then is being influenced in that color of the year. So it's just kind of a fun way for people to understand Pantone and to understand what they do.
Well, let's transition to talking about what colors say about us as individuals. Do the colors that we select, whether it be the cars that we drive or the way we paint our homes, or the colors that we wear on our clothing, do they reveal things about our inner selves?
For sure. Now, obviously, sometimes we just gravitate to colors that we feel comfortable and safe in, and those could be the palettes of the colors when I talked about the seasons. But there is research that actually shows that if you are an extroverted person, you tend to actually pick brighter colors, brighter patterns, brighter prints. And this isn't just for your fashion purchases, also your interior design, furniture, the way you paint your walls. Whereas introverted people do tend to pick more muted, softer, pastel type colors.
Well, I've got one last question because we're down to just 30 seconds now. Are there any colors that always clash, or is the concept of clashing colors an outdated notion?
So it's probably slightly outdated, but there are still some cultural and societal components, and one of those would probably be navy blue and black. However, when it's done well, it looks beautiful, but people a lot of times are nervous to try it because of the kind of societal connotations of it.
Okay, well, on that note, we do have to close out the program. This has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fun, and I just want people to know to have fun with color.
Very good. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Talking Points. Be sure to join us again soon for the next episode. Until then, I'm Dave Kelly. Have a nice day.